All right, let's look at a terrible take from 2014. Why the US has the most powerful currency on the planet. And I just find this very amusing for a whole series of reasons. So, first off, bad website design, enormous amounts of white space, dumb ads nobody looks at, more ads, moving ads, blah 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 blah. Bloat, shovel code, whatever you want to call it, dying internet. Alright, so I'm not going to read this, but it talks about was created in 1914, little fanfare, dire warnings. So they complained or warned about printing money and creating hyperinflation. And they say this with a skeptical air, but then they proceed to talk about how they did just that with the continental dollar. And, the US is said to have never defaulted, but it has. So here they're talking about 1873, 84, 90, 93, 07. These are bubbles. But, the US went off the gold standard, which was a default, and then it went off a fractional gold standard, which was also a default. But, the US also pays for its debt with more debt. Isn't that the definition of being bankrupt? Like, if I took a credit card, if I tried to pay off my credit card debt, say I had 5 credit cards, and I'm like, oh man, I can't pay my credit cards. Well, let me take out another credit card to pay my credit cards. You would say to yourself, that is insane, and you are broke. And that is what that would mean. They're talking about a safe port in the storm. British had a pound. And then they talk about how the U.S. came to World War I and World War II late. So it was really good for them economically. Does that remind you of anything? Having a war, letting other people fight first, then coming in later. Yeah, so it's the middle of 2023. Let's see how this ages. Of course, I suspect things are a little bit different now than World War I and World War II. So they talk about how all of these countries have inflation because they're printing money. Then they talk about Bretton Woods. They talk about us getting off the gold standard. They talk about surpluses and nonsense. And yeah, you got off the gold standard and things were rough. What do you know? So the only reason I think that the US dollar survived as a strong currency, and they talk about this, was because it was sort of just the best place to park cash. There's another reason that they don't talk about. Well, what do they not talk about? They don't talk about the petrodollar. Well, what's going away right now? Petrodollar and all that sort of stuff. You've got BRICS, you've got Saudi Arabia, which is the big one. That was really the anchor for the whole petrodollar. And it's just very strange to me the way that they word these articles. But since then, the US currency has only seemed to grow more central to the world order. Many theories why, aside the U.S. economy, dominance of financial markets, sheer inertia. And they also talk about just sort of psychological, mystical thinking here. Somewhat mystical elements, confidence and trust. So, a confidence game, a Ponzi scheme. Now, listen, if you're on certain areas of the internet, you know all this. I just wanted to point out another terrible op-ed. This is already not aging well. This is from 2014. God, didn't we have like a minor crisis circa 2014? Seems like they're happening so often now, it's hard to even keep track. Let's see. If the U.S. created loads of money from thin air and used it to buy bonds, would ultimately undermine the dollar, set off a wave of inflation, spook global investors. Unhinge interest rates saddle the Treasury with crippling interest payments and cause the U.S. economy to once again stall. Sounds legit. Let me know what you think.